This week, we talk about freedom and expansionism in the first part penned by Lieutenant Colonel Edward L. Bloom. What mental traits that are common to us all mystically influence universal forces. Then, we'll read a piece coming from the New Age magazine all the way back in October of 1951 by Edward Martin on religion, the human common denominator. Do we all have some form of religion? Do they have common characteristics, and what are they? And what is MCME 1949? Well, it's no puzzle. It's the Midwest Conference on Masonic Education, which was founded in 1949. This week, we'll take a look at the conference, how you can be a part of it, and what it means to be represented. All this and a whole lot more. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry. Here's your host, Brother Robert Johnson.
Welcome back to the show. This is episode number 672. Thanks for joining us. Quickly, I want to thank our contributors, fellows, producers, and legacy partners of the WCY podcast. It is because of you we can continue to offer weekly Masonic education for anyone interested in Freemasonry and its kindred sciences. If you are out there and you're thinking, hey, how can I help support this endeavor? Well, head on over to our website, wcypodcast.com, click on the banner at the top, support the show, and you'll find various tiers that you can help with by signing up. We have them both on Patreon as well as PayPal, so you can do whichever you choose. What do you get for those things? Well, a contributor gets your name on the website, a fellow gets that, plus a thank you card in the mail, and a producer gets that, plus the card, gets the name on the website, the card, and I'll send you a WCY producer's pin. And what's a legacy partner? Well, a legacy partner is our top tier designed to allow the WCY podcast the ability to make large changes that would otherwise take years to fund. Legacy partners get all of the perks above of the producer tier, as well as you get to pick an episode topic, select articles for inclusion, and give direction once a year. So legacy partners will work directly with me to create their dream episode each year. Articles for inclusion is dependent, of course, on copyrights, permission, and appropriateness of the content, and, of course, appropriate requests only. Now, with that out of the way, I want to move on to news and the like. First, I would love to mention the San Antonio Esoteric Summit for 2025. It's going to be an inaugural event, June 7th. It is a special one-day event focusing on esoterica and hermetic philosophy, focused on lectures and interactive discussions with 7 nationally known presenters. The tickets are limited to 50 attendees only, allowing transcendent opportunity for interactions between speakers and audience. You can get your tickets by going to tinyurl.com/ and then there's a little code. It is 4WVKJPAF. Now, if that's too wild, just know I'll have a link back to the tickets in the show notes for you, and we'll also share that on our social medias as well. Who are the presenters? All right. Well, the presenters for this event include Jeff Bennett, Texas, Ben Williams, Colorado, Frank Zepp, Dirk Hughes from Michigan, myself, Rodney McGilvery, and TJ Brumfield, and it'll be at the Alzavar Shrine at the Director's Staff Building. And this is sponsored by several Masonic lodges in the Texas area. And so our thanks to those lodges for sponsoring the event, and thanks to those who are going to be heading out to the event. Again, Saturday, June 7th, 2025, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. What am I going to be talking on? Well, I think I'll be kicking off the day, as far as I understand, I'm opening the day with Esoterics 101. And this should provide a good baseline and a great launch point for the rest of the day, which is only going to get more interesting as the day goes on and people and our presenters unpack things, and we have great conversations, as we alluded to, with the transcendent opportunity for interactions between both speakers and audience. So this will be both an opportunity for education as well, if you are familiar with the idea, but a mastermind of sorts for all attendees. Now, before we talk about the next cool event that I think you guys are really going to dig, I want to tell you a little bit about the Midwest Conference on Masonic Education. My plan is to get the current president of the Midwest Conference on, who is James Buckhorn. We'll be getting him on soon. But this is a very important conference. This is both letting you know that the event is coming up, but also serves as its own educational piece for this episode, in that the Midwest Conference on Masonic Education was formed in 1949 at a gathering of interested Masons from Illinois, including Alphonse Serza, he's world-renowned, and of course, Iowa. The outcome was to continue getting together by establishing the first annual meeting, which was held back in December of 1950 in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. The organization is comprised of a loose and ever-changing collection of Masonic educators from Grand Lodge jurisdictions located in 12 central states. Other participants frequently include chairs on Masonic education, as well as Grand Lodge officers. Now, how does this stack up to something like you may have heard about, like the Conference of Grand Masters or the Midwest Conference of Grand Masters? This is very much the same sort of idea, except this is based on the foundation of Freemasonry, education. How do you make good men better? Well, that involves a process of education, specifically Masonic education, which encompasses a number of different facets. But this is right there next to all of those kind of official Grand Lodge recognized conferences. Think about the Midwest Conference as the same thing as the Conference of Grand Masters, except for educators. And it is not as formal in that it doesn't focus on the pomp and circumstance of anything, but rather the meat and potatoes of, or rather the protein of Masonry, which is of course the education. The aim of the conference is to promote Masonic education, in part by providing a forum for the educators to gather, to freely discuss Masonic issues, of course to socialize, share some fellowship, and learn from sharing experiences while building beneficial relationships. There's a little bit of networking, a lot of bit of networking actually that goes on there. But in addition, the conference initiates special projects such as collection of data and educational practices from across the North American jurisdictions, as well as encouraging Masonic research and writing by individual educators. They function by meeting once a year, usually in late April or early May, in one of the member jurisdictions. Now, the responsibility for conducting the annual meeting rotates each year, eventually being hosted by all member jurisdictions before repeating. A typical program schedule includes presentations by well-known Masonic speakers, experiential, as well as scholarly participant presentations, roundtable discussions, and jurisdiction reports. Now, in the last few years, I should say, the jurisdictional reports have been sort of moved into a Google Drive situation where participants are encouraged to explore those and read them on their own time. That way they don't take up the valuable time of fellowship and discussions, right? Like the hope is that you read that stuff and then you find guys that you want to talk to about those things, see how they worked and changed, and get the nuances of those educational experiences. And sufficient time is also arranged to provide informal chats among attendees. And for more than half a century, the participants have expressed the view that our conference is well worth the time, the effort, and the cost in order to gain the countless benefits from attending and participating. Member jurisdictions. Who all is a member? Because I have said there are a number of different organizations and states that are members of the conference. Now, the conference, as far as grand jurisdictions go, we have Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Nebraska, Ohio, North and South Dakota, and Texas. So what that means is, if you are a Mason listening to this show right now and you are a member of any one of those organizations, the educational content of your jurisdiction is likely and in part influenced in some way by what happens at this conference. It's true. And also, I should mention that in addition to the complete member jurisdictions, there can be organizational members of the conference as well, which include the Andrew Torek Foundation, the Masonic Renewal Committee of North America. That's right, if you're a Scottish Rite Northern Jurisdiction member, you definitely know about the MRC. And of course, the Whence podcast. Our podcast is a member of the conference, as we should be. We've been a driving force in Masonic education for over 10 years now. And there are a number of individual members as well. So even if you're not a member, let's pretend for a moment that your jurisdiction isn't a member. For instance, if you're a member in Kansas who is not currently a member jurisdiction, and you want to be a member of the Midwest Conference, you can buy an individual membership, and that gets you a vote at the table. This is a great way to begin pulling the information as a non-member jurisdiction, but you're a personal member. You can get the information, you can send what you learned and what happened at the conference back to your Grand Lodge, and maybe the Grand Jurisdiction decides, hey, we want to be a part of this also. And as it stands right now, I crunched the numbers early on for this, I can tell you that over 53% of all Masons in the United States, more than half, are represented at this conference. So we've got about 46.5% of the grand jurisdictions who are not represented. At this point, it's larger than the Midwest Conference. It is the Conference of Masonic Education. So I want to give you this pitch. All Master Masons, Masonic affiliated organizations, and recognized Masonic jurisdictions in the United States, Canada, or worldwide are encouraged to join and become a part of the conference. Interesting and effective sharing of Masonic knowledge is needed now more than ever, and this Midwest Conference strives to share those best practices in education with other members. This mission is accomplished by appropriate communication links, presentation of scholarly Masonic papers, topical roundtable discussions. Again, opportunities are limitless. You can get an individual membership, an organizational membership, or a jurisdictional membership. Jurisdictional membership gets up to 5 votes at the annual conference, organizational up to 3 votes, and an individual up to 1 vote. Right? And there's several other things. You can check it out at mcme1949.org. And so here we are. We're coming up on the conference for 2025. The 2025 Midwest Conference of Masonic Education is going to be hosted this year by the Grand Lodge of Indiana, FNAM. The dates are May 2nd through the 4th. I will be there the entire time along with several Illinois Masons. I'll be there with WCY. I'll have a table selling some leatherworks and things on the side while I participate in all of the activities that are happening. But I'm very excited because I'm also going to be there with James Fry, the current Worshipful Master of the Illinois Lodge of Research, the current Master of Watoma Lodge up in Watoma, Wisconsin, Worshipful Brother Adam Rigdon. I'll be there with Right Worshipful Brother Spencer Hammond, who will be there representing, he's an individual member, but he also will be having a lot of his awesome woodworks available, which his company is The Uncommon Gavel. You want to check them out. Worshipful Brother Scott Duvall, past State Education Officer of the Grand Lodge of Illinois, will be there. And this is the 75th Midwest Conference on Masonic Education, so it really promises to be an excellent event that offers excellent resources for Masonic educators at all levels. So whether you're the chair of the education in your jurisdiction, a local lodge education officer, or maybe you're just a brother interested in contributing to Masonic education in your local lodge, the conference welcomes you. They're really looking forward to the great presentations and the useful workshops and interactions. There will be plenty of good fellowship and an unmatched opportunity to see what's new and exciting in Masonic education across the jurisdictions. I've had a wonderful chat with Brother James about this year's themes and events, and it's really going to be amazing. Can't wait to have this conversation with him and share that with you all. The scheduled speakers, which are subject to change at the moment, but we are having Dr. Heather K. Calloway. She'll be doing a presentation called Hands-on History, Volunteer to Save Our Fraternal Heritage. We have Right Worshipful Daniel Gardner doing a presentation called Research for Anyone. He says, learn how to contribute to Masonic research by taking seemingly simple tasks and data points to completion. By being every bit as mundane as this sounds, you can reveal meaningful stories. Once there, you get to decide if you want to elevate those stories into greatness by challenging the status quo. Of course, we have illustrious Stephen L. Harrison. He's going to be doing a presentation based on his new, amazing, mind-blowing book, The Imperfect Storm. This is a new book, The Imperfect Storm. It sheds new light on the most infamous cold case of the 19th century, the abduction and disappearance of William Morgan. Brother Harrison will be presenting how he went about the research for the book and how he crafted the enormous amount of information into what will become the most important Masonic read of the 21st centuries. Not enough? How about Brother Adam Kendall, the executive director of the Oakland Scottish Rite Historical Foundation and a past master of the San Francisco Phoenix Lodge number 144, who's worked for over 2 decades promoting the study of Masonic history. Brother Chris Hodap is going to be doing something called Ask Away, an idiot and a dummy answer anything you want to know about Masonry. So who's the other one? Of course, S. Brent Morris. He'll be doing this joint panel discussion with Brother Chris where you get to ask the dummy and an idiot anything you wanted to know about Masonry. Why? Well, because they both wrote respective books about Freemasonry for Dummies and The Idiot's Guide to Freemasonry, and they are world-renowned speakers, and we'll both be there. Now, that's just the presenters. There's a ton of other things that are going to be happening. You can catch everything along with other people who will be there, Ties on the Level, theuncommongavel.com, Eclectic House Studios, Illinois Regalia, Masonic Renewal Committee, and of course the Philalethes Society will be there as well. So you're definitely going to want to come out to the event. Again, this is not just a plug for the event and it's happening. This is actual education information that I think is relevant because over half of all Masons in the United States are represented by this conference, and you should know about it, and you should be there. The first piece I wanted to read for you all this week is called Freedom and Expansionism by Lieutenant Colonel Edward L. Bloom, 32nd degree, of Colorado. Now this is part 1, and I've had a little bit of a time trying to find part 2, and when I do find it, we will read it. We will reference this first part and make sure we have links back to everything. But this is an interesting one, and it comes out of the New Age magazine, which from the Scottish Rite, October 1951. Now, those of you who listened to the last few episodes know that I was pointing out the Scottish Rite and its role and published opinions on topics that seemingly are political, but rather are much more humanitarian in nature and thus under the umbrella of things that the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite cares about. Now, we're going to read this article, again, part 1, which should give us all something to think about. Freedom and Expansionism. The praises of the multitude shall not inflate my ego, neither shall failure impair my self-confidence, if I am humble. Only thus can I know the freedom which God bequeathed to me. Hermes Trismegistus. Part 1. Scientists inform us that the physical universe is expanding and has been doing so for many years. How long this expansion of exploding stars will continue is a mystery, perhaps an insoluble question. In the same breath, the scientists tell us that the unknown factors of the microscopic world are just as great and baffling as those we see through telescopic photography. Since we must live in and are strongly influenced by both the expanding universe and the microscopic universe, is it not well to examine both and arrive at some independent conclusions? Let us take the case of the expanding universe and see, if we are inescapably affected by it, how we can recognize its powerful effect upon us, particularly in the world political arena, and why we must squarely face the reality of it today. The physical universe usually represents a material expansion in its largest materialistic sense. One example is the effect that sunburn has upon us. Here we have a common example of our solar nucleus expanding in rays which are some 90 million miles on their course of curved travel. It not only causes sunburn, but without this expansion, life would soon disappear on Earth. It causes man to wear hats, caps, turbans. This creates an entire industry of hat manufacturers, and with the myriad of designs necessary in women's hats, the use of expansion appears quite justified. Thus, we have a direct case of the expanding universe causing 1. Sunburn, 2. An expanding consumer goods industry, 3. Plants and living humans to grow. If we are to believe the writings of Velikovsky, the physical expanding universe profoundly affected and altered man's habits of life, individually and en masse, over the entire Earth. In his book, Worlds in Collision, Velikovsky points out that one of the near collisions was so catastrophic that, to this very day, a fear of the 13th influences many people. When the former comet Venus changed its orbit, on the 13th of the ancient calendar month it showered the earth with flaming rocks. It influenced, in a good way, the microscopic or inward world of mankind, for shortly thereafter, Moses proclaimed the 10 Commandments, and oil was placed upon the earth, not to be used for many centuries commercially, causing the automobile expansion of today. So, we realize that this physical expanding universe affects not only the physical human, but the microscopic mental world. Another example of physical expansion, again caused by the heavenly body, our sun, is the common daily evaporation of seawater into invisible vapor. Through condensation come rain and snow, with the consequent crops, trees, plants, drinking water, etc. Were it not for celestial expansion, our mass-produced material things, automobiles, telephones, clothes, houses, and all of the rest, could never have been possible. But let us not forget that these material comforts and necessities had their roots in the inspired microscopic, mental, emotional, spiritual world, of which more will be explained. In our economic life, even as late as 1865, expansionism had not influenced our attitudes and habits of life in any appreciable or harmful degree. Rather, our attitude was one of staunch self-reliance and independence. To be beholden to no man, in one word, free. Both Generals Grant and Lee agreed that every veteran of the Civil War be given a mule and a plow that he might continue his agrarian life of peace and freedom. Shortly after the war, we witness a growth and rapid expansion of business into what was later to be bracketed under the broad name of trusts. When we read history and become conscious of the deplorable social and working conditions in existence in the latter half of the 19th century, we are almost obliged to admit that the South had taught the North a lesson in economies. That lesson was that on a plantation, the greatest yield per dollar invested was in direct ratio to the large number of acres cultivated with many slaves and few masters. In other words, the larger the tract of land cultivated, the greater the number of slaves. If there were few masters, the greater the percent of income to dollar invested. Our most shameful war with Mexico was basically caused by an extension or expansion of this idea, by forcefully taking Texas. It is interesting to compare this slavery with the situation in Russia today. One of the differences being that in 1860 in Alabama, you might have been a slave to a quote-unquote good master, while in Russia today, you are a helpless victim of a little group of men drugged with power and expansionism for the sake of that alone. We halted this slave expansionism, but it sprang up in somewhat milder form in the trusts. Not until the Sherman antitrust law were the evils of unrestrained monopolistic expansionism checked. The same expansionist idea threaded its way across continents, and because of the international cartels in World War II, many stumbling blocks were thrown in the war effort, particularly in the technical know-how field. The inward impulsion to expand a business is bustered by the desire of more power over more people, ego power. It holds a good prospect for the subjugation of personal old age fear. But most of all, there is an extremely gratifying emotion of being acclaimed as a success by one's fellow men. In short, to have a place in the sun, in an expanding world. But great danger lurks in this and must be resisted. To receive too much praise is bad for both the ego and the work line, and like Hitler's world balloon in The Great Dictator, is liable to explode in our faces if overinflated. Let praise be always reserved for God, in huge quantities at any rate. This mental trait, common to us all, is mystically influenced by universal forces. Between the physical, expanding universe and the microscopic universe, there is no sharp division, as each is acted upon by the other. The shoreline is not fixed, and fast as the ocean tides mold it, and the ocean in turn is affected by the emptying rivers of silt. Only the wise person is capable of calling a halt to an ego growing out of sensible proportion. But rationalization of ego expansion is almost as easy as breathing. The mind and the ego in man is a most sensitive and wonderful mechanism. It is power. And by that token, it must be observed constantly in a detached manner by everyone in order to check its forward inertia. This is especially important if it veers toward an erratic course. Remember Venus, or if it begins to create conditions of living and thinking which are definitely harmful to humanity. To be continued. I found this piece to be interesting in that sometimes, well, quite often actually, minds think so differently and present ideas in ways that are not at first easily understood by what I will call the average mind. Not that the average mind is normal by any means. However, people think differently, and the way they present their ideas comes across in almost code, or the way they express their ideas are in modes that are not what we're used to. And I'm curious to finish this when we find the other half, so we see how it all ties together. Masonically speaking, I think the piece is very poignant in that it teaches us about the ego in man, being both sensitive and wonderful mechanism. It is power. Think back to the series we did on Troward. Now, also consider this idea that in Masonry there's this fundamental idea that seems to be pushed forward in newer Masons' minds who finally sort of quote-unquote get it, the idea of ego death. Yet the Master knows that the ego shouldn't die, but should be controlled. And I think that's very important. We need to understand that ego is not the enemy. It is both something to be kept in check and used appropriately. Before we move on to the second piece, I wanted to let you all know that the latest edition, the February-March edition of the Illinois Lodge of Research's, the Illinois Grand Lodge Education Committee, the Lyceum, is out right now. You'll be able to grab a copy of it off the Illinois Lodge of Research website. It is not a product of the Illinois Lodge of Research. We're just hosting the magazine there. It is also hosted on the Grand Lodge of Illinois website, but that takes a little bit longer, and since I'm the webmaster at ILOR, I also just take care of that right away. You could pick it up also in the email if you are a member of the Grand Jurisdiction of Illinois. It went out to all members with valid email addresses. It is available in the Facebook group under files for the Grand Lodge of Illinois. It is a edition of the magazine that I was very happy and proud to put together. We got to focus on, since it was February and March put together, both Black Freemasonry and unity as our theme for the issue. And we have a great article from Brother Chad Lasik called Every Single Human Being, which is thoughtfully examines our shared humanity. We have a particular highlight, a few particular highlights of the issue. We have an article on Worshipful Brother Robert Smalls, who is a Civil War hero. We also have a story from Stephen L. Harrison, the fellow of the Missouri Lodge of Research. Also, you heard me talk about him earlier. He explores a rich tapestry of the Knights of Wise Men, a unique tale involving Lionel Richie, a famed singer and musician, right? And similarly, we've got another article from Todd E. Creason, also a fellow of the Missouri Lodge of Research and the founder of the Midnight Freemasons blog. He talks about Nat King Cole's unforgettable escape, which is its own story that you need to read about. You can uncover the story of Hiram Rhodes and our famous Freemason series in there. And we've got a great write-up on the Phylaxis Society, which is a showcase of the vibrant contributions of Masons across various spheres. So I really feel confident that you will enjoy each of the articles, and they'll deepen your understanding and appreciation of our revered traditions and values. It's a timely issue, especially as we advocate for Masonic learning in an era where educational challenges are casting long shadows across our nation. So I really hope you guys find some inspiration in those pages, and please check out the issue. Enjoy! Another conference coming up, Esotericon. We've got a little bit of news. Tickets are on sale for that now as well. Not only are the tickets on sale, they have released their keynote speaker, which is going to be Ike Baker. Ike Baker, an internationally acclaimed author of A Formless Fire, Rediscovering the Magical Traditions of the West, under Tria Prima in 2024, Etheric Magic, A Complete System of Elemental, Celestial, and Alchemical Magic. And he is a scholar, speaker, content creator, and a practitioner in Western esoteric traditions. He hosts the Arcanum YouTube channel and the podcast where he produces documentary-style presentations on all aspects of Western esoteric traditions, including alchemy, astrology, ceremonial magic, and their respective histories and philosophical traditions. He will be doing a presentation called Alchemical Initiation, Transfiguration, and Spiritual Vision on the Path of the Rose Cross. The presentation will look at some of the initiatory formulas and mechanics of initiating organizations with Rosicrucian movement, as well as techniques of inner alchemy and spiritual development transmitted by certain Rosicrucian luminaries. Among these are Martinez de Pasquale, Eliphas Levi, Alois Mailander, Gustav Meyrink, and several others. They'll also talk about how inner alchemical practices can be used in modern practical systems of ceremonial and initiation. So, be sure to check out esotericon.net. That'll be happening on June 14th, Father's Day weekend 2025. Will I be there? Yes, I will. I'll see you guys there. Now, the next piece I want to read for you is called Religion, the Human Common Denominator. This is by Edward A. Martin, 32nd degree, under the Grand Jurisdiction of Colorado. Also coming from the New Age of the Scottish Rite magazine, October 1951. Religion is a normal product of man's conscious processes, his desires, his fears, and especially his planning for future contingencies. It is recognition by man of a controlling superhuman power, entitled to obedience, reverence, and worship. The feeling of the spiritual attitude of man in recognition of such a controlling power. Observance of the most primitive existing races of men in the world today, the study of historical records dating back to the very earliest of such known records, and the finding by archaeologists of prehistoric specimens all point to the conclusion that the human race has always been universally religious, that every group in every period of history has held to some religion, some form of ritualistic observance. The Golden Rule. Every living religion has an object of worship, a set of rules which includes both repressions and commands, moral standards, definite rewards for obedience and punishments for disobedience, and almost every religion has its golden rule. It is interesting to note the various religious statements of the golden rule. Several of them so stated are, in Christianity, all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. Judaism, whatever you do not wish your neighbor to do to you, do not unto him. Muslim, let none of you treat a brother in a way he himself would dislike to be treated. Zoroastrianism, do as you would be done by. Taoism, recompense injury with kindness. Confucianism, what you would not wish done to yourself, do not to others. Hinduism, the true rule is to do by the things of others as you do by your own. Religious development. Like all phases of human experience, religion has developed from the primitive to the present stage of culture. The problem of religious origins is connected with the problem of nature of religion. It is helpful to understand something of the religious attitudes that have existed since the dawn of history. For it is from these religions of the past that the religions of the present have developed. In this, religion at large must not be confused with any special brand of it. Probably the earliest religious concepts in man were the products of fear and the desire to protect himself from the elements. He did not understand the lightning, the thunder, the sunshine, or the rain. Inasmuch as he had no control over these things, he feared them and sought a mystical or magical formula by which he could exercise some form of appeasement or regulation. It was largely a matter of self-preservation with him. He could not control the weather, and he feared it might injure or destroy him. Another basis for his fear appeared to him in dreams. Early man, like small child of today, could not differentiate between dreams and actual happenings. To him, these experiences of his dreams had actually happened. Perhaps a deceased friend or enemy had appeared to him in a dream. From this experience, he got the idea of a spirit world, of a future life and death, the idea of a dead man's ghost haunting him. He feared these things because he could not control them. He did not understand their cause. This fear led to the earliest form of worship, which was probably a form of magic. Amulets and charms were a form of magic. Amulets and charms were originated as forms of protection. Animism, the belief that everything contains spirit, attributing supernatural force to material objects, was among the earliest religious beliefs. Offerings to the wind, sun worship, and others were the early attempts at appeasement, and for gaining favor with these elements that could not be controlled. Magic, the occult and mysterious, is in all primitive religions. The fetish, an inanimate object supposed to possess magical power, hocus-pocus rituals the medicine man methods. These are all important in primitive religions. The Australian Aborigines, the most primitive race in the world today, practice magic. The next step in religious development was probably idolatry and totemism. These forms being a step higher than magic. Idols and totems exist in many sections of the world, many times remnants of bygone civilizations. However, many primitive tribes in existence today practice these forms of religious observance. Nature worship, personification of nature or of phases of forces of nature, prevailed in early Greek and Roman religions. Appeasement of the dead and ancestor worship are still in evidence in some of today's religions. Mystery and fear prevail in these beliefs. The living are real and not feared. The dead are dreaded or revered. Superstitions, such as amulets and charms and magic, not only played a most important part in early religions, but they are not entirely absent from present-day civilization. An amulet may be an object or a stone, a piece of wood, a plant, a mineral. Inscribed amulets are believed to have protective forces because of the inherent power of a written word. In our own land, a rabbit's foot or a lucky pocket piece are supposed to bring good luck. Will man ever progress to the point where he is entirely free from superstition? The function of religion. Religion gives to man what he can obtain from no other source, a confidence in the outcome of life's struggles through a personal connection with a superior power or powers in the world. It helps him bear the trouble of his life. It offers a solution of a problem of evil and improves the quality of the present life. It offers the hope of a better life in the future and outlines an ideal society for a future life. It sets a working plan of salvation. Some kind of deity is indispensable in religion. Personal conceptions vary greatly. Some deities are limited, some arbitrary, and some loving, some all-powerful. The supreme being of every religion has 5 characteristics. 1. It is superhuman in character and power. 2. It is invisible, even though it may be materially represented. 3. It is controlling. As an example, it rules over human welfare and destiny. 4. It is responsive to efforts of humans who act religiously. 5. It is worshipful, arousing emotions of awe, reverence, trust, obedience, cooperation, and submission. Every religious human being has experience with a deity believed to possess these 5 characteristics. Almost every religion believes it has the sole duty to win the entire world to its belief. In the emphasis placed on the various conceptions of religion, some are placed on the intellectual, some on the moral, some on the emotional, some on worship, some on self, some social. In the comparison of the different religions, one or more of the following different standpoints can be taken. 1. To condemn all religions as the outcome of superstition, bigotry, hereditary ignorance. 2. To condemn all non-Christian religions or all non-biblical religions. 3. To condemn all other religions except one's own. This is common viewpoint in all religions. 4. To admit good in all religions and believe each one is good for its own followers and that each is making its contribution to civilization. 5. To admit all religions contain some good but are unequal and that the world needs the best there is to be had. An interesting notion put forth in this. I'm not sure I agree with his 5 points on the characteristics. There are a number of spiritual beliefs that have none of these. For instance, deism, and particularly number 3, that it is controlling. It rules over human welfare and destiny. This is what we have free will for, of course, in something like deism. However, an interesting article, and I think discussing perhaps those 5 points and where there are differences in our practiced religions might make for an interesting lodge discussion piece. Not, of course, in the element of religious or proselytizing, but simply as an educational piece. If that is the case, I urge you to tread carefully and be objective. That's it for this week. One more time, I want to thank our producers, legacy partners, contributors, and fellows of the WCY podcast. If you're interested in helping out this show, please head on over to our website, wcypodcast.com, click on support the show, and check out those various options. That's it, and until next week, stay on the level. For Whence Came You, I'm Robert Johnson. Take care.
You've been listening to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry with your host, Brother Robert Johnson. Be sure to join us for our next edition.
WCY Media.
Well, you guys beat me. It's not the